The customs agents admitted that the order to search the vehicle was a blank order that was signed 3 days in advance of the facts taking place. And one of the agents admitted that with his own handwriting, he filled in Andrew's name and the information for his vehicle.
A former U.S. Marine sergeant has been held in a Mexico jail now for more than 3 months. The state of California needs to once again look itself in a fractured mirror and wonder what, if anything, can be done to honestly prepare for a coming disaster, and why the Washington Redskins should fight the move to force them into a nickname change. All this and perhaps more on the docket as we welcome into MidPoint California assemblyman who hopes to one day become governor of that fine state. And today, holding a rally for Andrew Tahmooressi, Tim Donnelly joins us live from Sacramento. Tim, thanks so much for being here today.
It's great to be on with you, JD.
Actually, it's Ed. JD comes earlier, but that's okay. We both have great hair, so you're close enough to that. So we're good. we got the TV hair working for us, so it's all right. That's fine. Hey, I can't let you go too far. We'll talk about Tahmooressi in a second, but I need to ask: have you guys quieted down out there? Not shaking anymore?
Yeah, everything's stable in California, or as stable as it ever gets out here.
How are people dealing with it this time? Because I know that Californians are very laissez-faire when it comes down to the earthquakes. If it happens, it happens. We're going to continue to live. But they keep telling us that sooner or later it's going to happen, and this is going to be disastrous and could go into the multiple billions of dollars. People have still got to be a little concerned.
Oh, absolutely. I think, but when you have an earthquake of this magnitude and there's no fatalities, that's significant. You can rebuild buildings.
Let's only hope that you don't have any fatalities. Let's only hope that people are a little bit more aware of what's going on. All right, let's go ahead and get down to what you're doing here for U.S. Marine Sergeant Andrew Tahmooressi. You're having what's a good word for today? You're having a public, you're on the public sidewalk outside of the Leland Stanford Governor's Mansion Museum with a protest today?
Well, it's actually tomorrow. We're going to be protesting a luncheon. The governor of California has invited the president of Mexico to come to California to be honored. And a couple weeks ago, our governor and a contingent of legislators went there and talked to him about global warming. But not one of them, not the governor, none of the legislators, not even the Republican who's a Marine, Rocky Chavez, not even he publicly asked or even privately asked about our Marine Sergeant Andrew Tahmooressi, who's being held captive in a Mexican jail for he basically made a wrong turn.
But why is it taking so long, and why is it in many ways, in your opinion and the opinion of many others, being so ignored?
I don't know why it's taking so long. I know it's not being ignored. If you look at this protest, we put up a Facebook page, an event page. It now has over 500 attendees. We've gotten thousands and thousands of phone calls from across the country. Groups that support veterans, patriot groups, are all coming together to demand from somebody who can actually affect his release. I mean, in California, you can commit a crime now, a serious crime, and be out of jail literally in 48 hours. And Sergeant Andrew Tahmooressi, who did not commit a crime, yes, he was in violation of Mexico's laws on carrying firearms for maybe 30 seconds while he was trying to do a U-turn. He's been in jail almost 6 months.
Then why would the Mexican government look to make a spectacle out of one guy who really just had a few seconds of crossing the border? There has to be a reason behind this.
Politics is a funny game. Maybe President Obama's hoping to look presidential at some point in the near future when he does an executive order and creates a backdoor amnesty, and then maybe we'll get our Marine in exchange. But look, Mexico is one of our allies. They're one of our most important trading partners. When their military crosses our border, we don't incarcerate them. We send them back. Sometimes we have to give them a GPS so they can find their way back to their country. When they send millions and millions of their citizens here, we don't incarcerate them for the most part unless they're criminals. We treat them better than we treat our own citizens in many regards. We treat them better than we treat our veterans, those who are willing to put their lives on the line for our freedom. So we are pulling together hundreds of people to drive home a point that we don't want to negotiate anything with the president of Mexico until he gives us back our Marine.
All right, now we heard from Fernando Benitez, who was the attorney for Tahmooressi. He said basically the case was allowed to simmer by his original attorneys. They have since been fired. He has now taken over. Do you have anything further from what may be happening or what the new attorneys are at least telling you as far as trying to get to that point of getting him released?
The only thing I've heard about the Mexican legal system is from the former president, Vicente Fox, who said it's a Napoleonic type of legal system where you're guilty until proven innocent. And basically you're declared guilty until you're willing to bribe the right person. And I don't think that Sergeant Andrew Tahmooressi, who is a man of honor, is going to be bribing anybody. But I do wish that our president would leave the golf course for at least 15 minutes and take a stand. After all, he's the commander-in-chief. It would be nice if he was presidential. Now, if he's not going to be, maybe Jerry Brown, who has made noise about wanting to run for president, maybe he could be presidential by demanding the release of a man who has put his life on the line so that we can live free. Is that too much to ask?
I don't think it's too much to ask, what many people are certainly pointing to. There is the point, though, and this is what the Mexican authorities will say, and as a matter of fact, I've got in my hand a copy from the Los Angeles Times, Robin Abirian, who wrote a column recently, a commentary, and she said, and she's talking here about Sergeant Tahmooressi mother. Jill Tahmooressi deft plucking of American heartstrings has been amplified by the echo chamber, helping turn her son's story into both a conservative cause celeb and a minor political headache for the Obama administration. How do you answer those and the critics such as this who say that this is not that big a deal, it is simply just something that Republicans are using as what she calls a conservative cause celeb?
That's despicable. Those are the words of an ignorant fool. This is not a Republican issue. This is an American issue. This is a man that literally was willing to go into harm's way and is suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And you know what's interesting? Veterans from all over the country, and veterans never talk about whether they're Democrats or Republicans. They just want to know if you're for them or against them. And whoever made that ignorant comment is obviously against them. But the bottom line is we want our Marine back. We want the same courtesy that we would afford to an ally shown to us. And we want a president that will stand up and do something about it. And look, it really doesn't matter to me whether it's President Obama or President Nieto of Mexico. Whoever wants to actually be a leader and lead and do the right thing, they'll be a hero.
Do you get the feeling that the president of Mexico and others in Mexico are just sort of using this as a see, we told you so kind of moment to the United States, almost putting a thumb in the eye of the United States?
If we had a real president, they would have already cut off all trade and foreign aid with one of our most important trading partners if it got to this point. But we don't have a real president. And I can't speak to what the Mexicans are thinking, but they better give us back our Marine because Americans are running out of patience.
One other thing here, a couple of minutes that we have left. I know that you've had an issue with the name change of the Washington Redskins. Tell us about that.
Well, I have an issue with the California state legislature that can't even balance its budget, that can't do anything right except continually interfere in the lives of free Americans and try to regulate them to death, take their Second Amendment rights, violate them every which way but loose, sending a resolution over to Washington, D.C. to lecture a private company on what they should name their football team. And you know, I said on the floor, we as Americans value the First Amendment, the right of free speech. We don't have a right to not be offended. And the idea that a government entity, that a legislature would waste the time of its people trying to lecture someone on who privately owns that company. Look, if there's a big issue, then they would hear from the customers. They would hear from the consumers. The football team actually operates in a free market. But up until this point, it's only been pandering politicians that have made noise. There were no complaints filed with the patent office that registered the name.
I got about 15 seconds left. What's your personal take on it? Should they keep the name?
I think they should be free to choose.
All right, we'll make that the last word. Tim Donnelly, thank you so much for your time. We do want to point out again, please correct me if I'm wrong, Tuesday, August 26th, from 9:30 a.m. until 1:30 p.m. Pacific Coast time on the public sidewalk outside Leland Stanford Governor's Mansion Museum, 800 N Street, Sacramento, California. That's where you're holding the protest, correct?
That is correct, and it's great to be on with you, Ed.
There we go. We got all
Godspeed.
those dates in there right now and made sure that we took care of it. Always a pleasure, Tim. Thanks so much. All right, later on this hour, News Call brings us the sights and sounds of network and local news coverage from the Northern California earthquake. And next up, the sounds of Sunday, what the talkers were nailing home from the Sunday news programs. It's all coming up right here next on MidPoint.